Hey there. This is a little demo of importing into Lightroom Classic. So I've got a catalog open. This is the same catalog that I give all the students in a folder with all the photos that are included in this catalog. And I'm going to use it as a demonstration for my import workflow. And so as you see here, I've just got a label on this catalog, which you can do very easily by going into Lightroom identity plate setup. I'm not going to demo that now, but just wanted to explain why that says that. Here's the catalog. It tells how many photos are in it, etc. Navigator, which honestly I don't use that much, but it's handy to have it open. And these are the folders. These are collections, and this I pretty much ignore for this quarter. All right, so if I wanted to go and import, then I go down here. This is the import dialog that pops up. It shows your sources. This is the hard drive here. And it's interesting how it shows this twice. It shows this as a separate volume, but also shows it as an attached volume. So that's why it does that. But this is the name of my camera card. Yours might say untitled. And as it defaults to the head folder, which contains all the pictures, of course, they show up here as various images that are on this card. And up here in the center, this is your import dialog. This is a whole separate thing here that we're going to talk about at another time. And it's important to know that this is your drop down as to the options of what you can do from an imported drive or a camera card. Now, this is, I've got a camera SD card inserted in my computer, so these are the options for that. Copy or copy as DNG. Copy as DNG means copy as a digital negative. That's an Adobe proprietary RAW format that combines the camera RAW format into a single file. And we can talk more about that. But right now we're going to just settle on copy. And then you can import all the photos. You can see they're all checked. Whoops, I clicked on that a little too hard. When you check and uncheck a photo, it shows up like that. And you've got your grid view here. You've got an enlarged view of a photo here. And notice that the unchecked photos are dimmed down. When you check off a photo, it gets a white outline and it's bright again. And you can see the camera file number. So you can either import everything on the card, but since I use cards sometimes repeatedly at different destinations on a given day, I don't usually import everything on the card. I usually select what I want to import. Fastest way for me to do that is if it's a card that's already had the majority of its photos imported over different times, I might just select new photos, in which case Lightroom will only select the ones that are not already in this catalog. So I'm going to stay with all photos for now. I'm going to zoom back up. And by the way, these are now being viewed by capture time. In fact, I've got these being viewed by Z to A instead of A to Z. What that means is right now I'm viewing A to Z, which means the most recent ones will be at the top and the most earliest ones will be at the bottom. If you want to change that, you can flip it from Z to A, or you could even change it instead of capture time to something else. The only time I would advise changing this is, let's say you're shooting RAW plus JPEG, and you might only want to import the RAW photos. So if you change it to file type, then you can segregate your import between the RAW files. And if you shot any JPEGs like I have here, they'll be down at the bottom. And without getting into too much detail about that, but if you have RAW plus JPEG, but you only want to bring in the RAWs, then what you do is just scroll down till you run out of RAWs, and then grab every other file. I'm holding down my Shift key, as you can see the pop-up here showing. And then I'm scrolling down, and while I'm holding down the Shift key, I then click the last photo. And here we go. Now I can go to the last picture that was a RAW. Here we go. And just hit uncheck. And now these are all unchecked and they're no longer going to be considered for import. Only the ones that are checked off will be imported. If you see any really dead images here, some bad frames or some screw ups, you can uncheck them individually if you want. If you want to examine a picture to see whether it's one you want to import, you can do that the same way you do in Lightroom. You just hit the E key, like I did here, or the G key gets you back to grid. But again, E key for enlarge, even though Lightroom calls it loop, I call it enlarge. And then you can use your arrow keys to scroll through. And these are clearly HDR frames, otherwise they wouldn't be getting from light to dark as they are right here. But anyway, going back to the grid. So then the next thing to pay attention to is your file handling. So this is destination. This is my hard drive. Generally, you won't have to be messing around with this. This is a default. Don't import suspected duplicates, which is great because if you reuse your camera card in either more than one camera or multiple shoots, and you've already imported several of the images on the card, don't import suspected duplicates will do exactly that. It will ignore and gray out and uncheck any of the images that are already in this catalog. Now, of course, none of these are in this catalog because this is a demo catalog. Embedded in Sidecar is how I have mine set up. And the reason is because for the Fujifilm camera, and I shoot camera sims, which are film sims, they're film simulations, and those only show up in the JPEG. So I have it set up this way so that my Fujifilm film simulation JPEGs are not changed by Lightroom. And that's something I'm not going to explain right now, but the standard is the default for Lightroom, and feel free to use that and stick with it. It's what most people do. I'm going to do that for now, just for this demo. Make a second copy. If you were in a commercial situation and you were taking in lots of camera cards of a shoot and you want to duplicate all the imports to a second hard drive, that's when you do that. Don't support rejected images, import rejected images. That's kind of something we've already set up. That's a new one. Build smart previews. We won't be doing that. That's something I'll explain later, or you can ask the question of what that means. Add to collection is something I only do if I'm traveling and I want to put everything I import into a collection that I've already made or that I make right now in order to be able to review images in the collections. And that's something that it's a little too complex to respond to right now, but I'm just going to leave it checked off. Next thing, file renaming. Now, this is where you can save yourself a lot of time. If all of the images that you've checked off for import are from the same place or have the same subject or topic, then it's a really good idea to take this time to do something that will save you a lot of time later. So I would rename these, and I'm going to call them Oregon Coast. And then I'm going to do comma, or you could do underscore, or you could do nothing. And then I'm going to put, maybe Boardman, meaning that's the Boardman card of Oregon Coast. But, just to simplify things, I think I'm just going to do Oregon Coast. And then I'm going to put a dash or an underscore because I have this set up to bring in a custom name plus the original file number. And that is a default or something that you can configure. But for now, I'm just going to call that my way of doing it. By the way, if you want to create these types of different templates, you do it by going either into edit, or you can create a new one just by going into edit, saying, I want mine to be custom text. That's what we're entering here. And the original file number suffix, which is what your camera puts in. And that's a pretty complex interface for me to describe right now. So you can look that up on YouTube, how to make a file template in a file name template in Lightroom. But for now, I'm just going to leave this alone. That's what it's going to do. And none of this you have to pay attention to. Apply during import. This is something that we're going to talk about, and that is you can assign a metadata template so that all the photos you take If your camera isn't already putting your copyright on your images in metadata, which mine does, I can assign metadata as it comes in. What I mean by that is my metadata is basically a place where I can just say, okay, I'm going to call this preset David. I'm going to call it Dave. Julian. And I'm going to call it copyright ARR. And that means my name, copyrighted, all rights reserved. And I'll show you what that means. So I'm not going to talk about these parts here, but if you go down to where it's red, that's a pretty good way of realizing that Adobe wants to bring your attention to the most common things that you can add as your copyright or your metadata. So IPTC just means metadata. Copyright, put my name. I'll use my full name, not my nickname. Copyright status, copyrighted. Rights and usage terms. This is where you can put something like by permission only, or for social media use only, or whatever you want to do. I'm going to put all rights reserved, and that just means that you can't do anything with your photos, with my photos, if you were to see my copyright show up in metadata somewhere on a server or on social media, without going to me first. And I actually have a web page that goes specifically into how to get in touch with me, but I'm not going to add that here. Creator, that would be me. I know it's annoying to see these pop up, but it's got its reasons. Creator phone, I'm not going to put my phone number in there. I would rather put my email. So I'm going to put art@davidjulian.com. Make sure I spelled it right. Nope, it automatically did my input, so I don't have to do that. Creator's website, well, why not? HTTPS, not typing well today, // and then that's where you could put your website. Job title, photographer, chief cook and bottle washer. And nothing else I really set up. So that's why this is a basic David Julian, copyright, all rights reserved. And I say create, and now that's the default copyright metadata that's going to be there until you change it. So each of your successive imports after that will have the same thing already connected. If you are importing images from the same place or same topic, once again, just as we're file naming these, we may as well also put a couple of keywords. So I'll put, sorry about that. Oregon coast. God, I'm really not spelling well tonight. I'm not a great typist. Oregon coast. Nope, that's Oregon. I'm not going to have to do that. And I might type in something else like Samuel L. Boardman Scenic Corridor, or whatever, whatever you want to put. I'm just getting detailed here. And I might put coast, seashore, road trip, 2025, anything you want to do that would help you find your pictures later in case you didn't remember what folder they were in, or you didn't remember whether you changed the file names, which most people don't bother doing it during the import. Anything you want to do. And it could be sunsets, it could be dogs, it could be whatever is in these photos. And I wouldn't get too detailed at this point, because what you'll find out is that there are a couple of photos that aren't going to fit all these different descriptors. So put in as few descriptors as you need in order to locate the photo by something in the photo. Because until AI can tell us everything about our photos and already put in its own keywords, we need to do something. And again, this is an option. You don't have to do it, but for this course, I'd like you to get to try to do it. Destination. This is where you tell Lightroom where your photos need to go. Now, Lightroom defaults by putting these into dated folders. And that's a cool system if you're shooting a lot of client work, you're doing weddings, portraits, whatever you're doing that's on a kind of a routine day-to-day basis. Or if you're doing a travel and you know that in this portion of this year you went to these places, whatever it is. So that's the way it does it by default. Year, and then date. Okay, all these photos apparently were made in October of 2022. I remember up here I used a keyword that said 2025, so I guess this is not the card I thought it was, but pretty sure that I shot these this year. So I could always change that. All right, small point. I do not use the dated format. And the reason is because I like to have folders with names on them that tell me the subject, the location, anything I can. Dates have nothing to do with any of part of my memory. I would never know how to look up a photo based on its date. And all that information of dates is automatically in the metadata anyway. I could always find photos by date without having to store them by date. So instead, I do it into one folder, meaning all of these photos I'm asking to import are going to go into one folder of my choosing. Now, this means that you have a chance of adding a folder right now if you don't have one already set up. So I could say subfolder, and I could put in Oregon Coast 2025 or fall 2025. I'm just putting something in here so that you have something to look at while I do the import. I'm going to ignore that whole 2022, 2025 thing. I think that's just an anomaly. Now these are going to go into my pictures folder, and that is the general place that every computer has a place for photos, and it lives inside your user. So pay no attention to my folders. They're not going to be the same as yours. Now, all of that said, this is the folder I just set up. So if you type in the name of a new folder here, it's going to show up here in the list in alphabetical order. It's going to be grayed out because there's nothing in it yet, and it's going to be italicized. Now, I want you to know something. I do not put my photos in the default place in my computer. I have my reasons for doing that. I have thousands and thousands of photos in this big 4 terabyte hard drive in my computer. I do not want them in the pictures folder. And the reason is that my cloud backup service, if I use the pictures folder, it would be backing up my Apple iPhone pictures, which is a ton of images. And I don't really need that to happen because I have the Apple iCloud. And there's a lot of other stuff in my pictures folder I do not want my photos to be part of. I want them to be in a folder I built called photography that includes client work, stuff that I put into Flickr, puts into general, and I have my travels. So that's just something I developed years ago before Lightroom, and it's something I've been sticking to. So now this new folder is going to go into my travels. And there it is, Oregon Coast, fall 2025. You notice that I've already got a folder here, but you usually don't already have a folder if this is the first import of a trip that you're doing. So for demo purposes, I'm going to make a new one. Once I've got that, then I've done all the things that I'm asking you to do. And this is what I'd call a complex import because I'm doing a lot of extra work here, like setting up renames, setting up keywords, doing a copyright template, making a custom destination folder. This may seem like an excessive amount of work for the casual user, especially if you're coming back and forth to your computer a lot and you're going to be downloading more and more pictures every time you go into your hotel room when you're traveling or every time you go back to your home or studio or whatever the heck you do. It's nice to be able to have a lot of work done during the import process, but not everyone's into that. Some people would rather just get the import done and then come back and do your keywording, do your renaming, do all that stuff. And guess what? I forget to do it. I get too busy to do it, and I don't do it. So I learned to do it during the import process, and I get very, very fast at doing that, even though it took me a while to demonstrate it. And if you're going to be coming back into that same camera card or using a different camera card, but you want the same information to happen on this side of the import dialog, you can make an import preset. And so I'm going to save the current settings, meaning everything I just did over here, as a new import. I'm going to call it or coast preset 1. I hit create. There's my Oregon Coast preset. And if I decided to go up here and change anything, let's say I decided to change this to 2025. Okay, notice that the preset now says edited. And if I want to do that on a one-time basis, then I can leave that the way it is. But let's say I was making correction that I want this import and all other imports successively using this preset to have. Then all I do is say update preset, and it'll take any changes I do either now or the next time I use this preset and embed them in the preset. So I'm basically replacing something I had done before with new information and updating the preset. I don't know if the import preset stores things like this. I think that's stored in the catalog, not in the preset. And there may be one or two other things that don't carry over into the preset, but basically that's how it works. And I find this incredibly helpful if I land in Havana, Cuba, and I'm going to be going in and out of the hotel for 7 days taking photographs in Havana, Cuba. Then I can do an import preset with a ton of keywords, destination already in the file names, a special folder for my travels in Cuba, right? I've got tons of them here. And make a preset so each time I come back and I want to add more pictures to that folder through different imports, whether it's this camera card or another one, all I have to do is fire up this preset and I got all that work done. Now I'm going to hit import. But actually, in order to speed things up, I'm actually going to cheat here. I'm not going to import all these photos because we'd be sitting here for quite a while. I'm going to uncheck all. And just to demonstrate this, I'm going to just select this many. And I'm going to hit import. So now it chugs through the card. It ingests those images and it loads them into that folder. Right now it's already brought the images in. Now it's just writing some previews. So Lightroom writes its own previews unless I tell it not to. That makes sure that the image is very, very visible at full screen. So it writes these nice juicy previews. And I can go to the catalog here and go to my most recent import or previous import, and that's the new ones. So even if I start playing around here and going into other folders and I'm like, okay, this is cool, but I want to see all my new images, well, I just have to go up to previous import, and those are the most recent ones. So that's how it all happens. You notice here that there's a new folder, and this is the folder that I imported those into. So these are my demo images. These are the ones I just made. Okay, so that's the demo. I'm sure that some of the things I did are going to not sink in, but you can rewatch this and ignore any of my mistakes at the beginning.